Where are you at? Let's see here. Okay, I got you. Yeah, stop right there.
Good evening. Welcome to our quarterly town hall with the City of Bexley and the Bexley Minority Parents Alliance. This is the second quarterly town hall we've done with this format, but even prior to this, over time, the City of Bexley has partnered with the BMPA and copy with the mayors and different events that we've done together. And so it's been a pleasure to continue that partnership. We're holding these town hall meetings because we believe that everyone in our community should feel safe and welcome in Bexley. And in the wake of all of the national events and local events around issues of race, equity, and justice, we want to reaffirm our commitment. And we want to reestablish our commitment, and we want to make it clear to all residents, all visitors of the city, how integral that commitment is to all of our day-to-day operations of the city and the ways that we work to shape our community and help to lead it. So tonight we have a great program put together, and to kick that off, I would like to turn this over to Dr. Jonathan Baker.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Mayor Kessler, that is. And good evening, everyone. So tonight we're going to have a variety, a jam-packed event with a variety of activities. First of all, we're going to kick things off with updates from our community groups. Those who've been doing excellent work in the last few months are some grassroots organizations working together in the areas of diversity, equity, inclusion, and of course, justice. Then we're going to move on to some more updates locally here with what's going on with the City of Bexley. And then we have a little surprise here with what we're doing with our police and community listening sessions that's on the horizon. We have a town hall Q&A with our panelists, and we'll wrap things up as close to 8:30 as possible. And now you may think to yourself, what are some of the discrete purposes and expectations for this meeting? Monica, go ahead and tell us a little more about that.
Monica, I think that you are muted on the
loudly. I'm here to provide the comic relief. Anyway, thank you, Ben. The purpose of this town hall is an opportunity to have a virtual community conversation about equity and inclusion in Bexley, and to highlight how we as a community in partnership with the city can focus on results-oriented change. This is an important way to listen, learn, and grow together. We all must be committed to listening and learning from each other. After the last town hall meeting, we collaborated with the city to create a listening sessions program in order to gather input and hear the voices of community members in a meaningful way. The expectations this evening of panel participants and for those participating in the question and answer portion is that people are treated with respect empathy, and the understanding that everyone involved this evening is seriously invested in a unified community and is operating in good faith towards the betterment of all Bexley residents. Thank you so much in advance for attending, for participating, and learning something new about the good work that is taking place in our beloved city. As Jonathan mentioned earlier, we have a very, very ambitious agenda. So I'll end with a friendly reminder that everyone is just trying to ensure Bexley residents feel respected and included. Now, turning it over to
Thank you,
Brian.
Monica, for that overview. And what we're going to do is have each of our 7 or so community groups give a short, brief, and yet powerful summary of what they've been up to the last few months. Now, they're going to each kind of go with their few minutes of time, and then when your slide comes on, then it's going to be on to the next group. Starting off with the Bexley Anti-Racism Project with Kaya Woodford.
Hello, my name is Kaya Woodford. I graduated from Bexley in 2019, and I currently study political science with minors in African American and African Studies, as well as Spanish at Ohio State. So at the start of the summer, around early June, we formed the Bexley Anti-Racism Project. And as all of you, I'm sure, are aware, we hosted a march on the 6th. So we've had community events led by Black yoga hosts, and we did a panel. We've done a ton of stuff, and currently we are working with the district as part of the Equity Task Force to reform procedure and policy to do with the school district, and hopefully implement policy, anti-racist policy with the school district. And further, we have been working with Brayer as well to reform with the police department. So essentially our platform is to educate, mobilize, and amplify Black voices in order to create a more equitable reality for Black students in the district. Are there any other specific updates? We've presented our list of demands. If you can look at all of our work on the bexleyarp.org website. Everything we've done has been published there, and we've also presented the district a set of demands. We've been meeting with the superintendent and members of the school board and working on those demands more specifically, but it was a longer list, so we do anticipate it will take time. And we'll also bring our concerns to the Equity Task Force as well. Hopefully we'll work within the task force to see the change we hope to enact on a broader scale. That's the hope as of present. It's subject to change as the reality for Black students in the school district does with time. So essentially our purpose is to serve the interest of the students.
Thank you so much, Kaya. I think Dr. Baker, is your audio working okay? We were having some issues unmuting it. Oh, there we go.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. Thank you so much, Kaya.
Of course. Thank you.
All right,
for
next
me.
we have Bexley Minority Alumni Association.
Good evening. Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Sam Marcelino, and I'm here to introduce you to the Bexley Minority Alumni Association. And I say introduce because this is a relatively new group, but certainly, as I'm sure we all agree, it's a very important one for the community. As a 2005 graduate of Bexley High School, it became very clear to me that this was a type of group that should be supported through our community, and that was important moving forward as we look to the future. So when Mr. Brian Drury reached out to me about joining this group, it was a no-brainer. The Bexley Minority Alumni Association was recently organized to help bring minority alumni together to help support each other, really, as we move forward in our current careers, whether that be something that we are looking for in the future in terms of something that we aspire to achieve, or something that we've already achieved and we want to help provide information about to the younger members or other people just looking to maybe make a lateral change in their career. So far, we've had a couple meetings to try and basically organize everything and get our mission statement running and organized as a whole. The biggest thing that I think we strive to achieve is creating a network of alumni to support each other and also the community. This is going to include a couple different aspects, including mentoring current students, hopefully providing some scholarship opportunities, but also helping the parents. We want to be a resource for the BMPA members, for their children, but not only their children, but for the parents as well. As all of us being minorities in the group itself, we've been through this. We've been through Bexley. We know what goes on. And so we are always here if you have an issue that you want to reach out about, discuss, and perhaps get some guidance on. But hopefully through the work, I know Kaya is a member as well. She's been great helping getting everything organized, including Mr. Drury. But certainly if any of you ever have any questions or would like us to connect with one of your children, please reach out, because we have a lot of people from a lot of different backgrounds, and we have a great group that's always there to help you if you need us. So as we get organized here, please let us know how we can be of assistance to you in the community.
Thanks, Sam. And now let's go on to Spencer from the Bexley Residents Against Institutional Racism. Spencer?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Bexley. My name is Spencer Cahoon, and I'm here speaking on behalf of BRARE, Bexley Residents Against Institutional Racism. Our mission is to identify and eliminate structural racism in the city of Bexley. And while structural racism exists in many areas, we are currently focused on police reform and expect to remain focused on that area for some time. Since our inception early this summer, we've been busy. We've organized a number of public meetings to educate Bexley about the experiences that our neighbors of color are having with Bexley Police. That includes collecting and sharing experiences of our residents and slowly converting the audio from the live events to YouTube so that they can be shared more easily for people who are not able to attend. Additionally, we've proposed charter amendments to the Charter Review Committee and discussed them with various members of city government. This includes anti-racism, anti-discrimination, and civil rights commitments, strategic planning around racism and discrimination elimination, chief of police requirements regarding hiring, contract, and annual reviews, a civilian police guidance and review board that's more extensive than the current board created by executive order, and changes to the initiative and referendum process to mirror the process for the state of Ohio. We've also published data showing the apparent discrimination in police traffic stops in Bexley compared to nearby communities. We've developed a list of relevant police reform proposals for implementation in Bexley. We've been collaborating with other like-minded groups to help get the message out, as you've already heard, and I'm sure you'll be hearing from more of those groups tonight. We've been engaging with City Council to support and inform residents about proposals that reduce or eliminate discriminatory barriers for people of color. We've been working to hold our elected leaders accountable for championing and enacting meaningful reform that addresses the structural racism in our community. And that includes requesting records for review after the city's release of the Law Enforcement Services Manual. Thank you for that transparency. To see that the police department is following its stated policies regarding community relations. We currently have multiple unanswered requests in this area. We're also reviewing budget and financial information to look at the real cost of our current level of policing services, which has been expanded dramatically over the last few years. Currently, more than 1 in 3 city dollars are paid for policing. Finally, we're fact-checking some of the city's claims in its recent reports, including the city's claim that we're compliant with the 8 can't wait recommendations for reducing the risk of police killings, comparing the recently published Law Enforcement Services Manual to the recommendations shows that we're not yet compliant with most of them. Now, we aim to improve life in Bexley by enhancing our community's solidarity around identifying and eliminating institutional racism that impacts our neighbors of color to make sure that everyone can enjoy the same benefits of living in Bexley. If you'd like to get involved, you can find and like our Facebook page to get updates as we post them. You can also join our Facebook group to join your voice to the conversation and let us know what's on your mind. And if you like, you can share your email and we'll be happy to add you to our mailing list regarding upcoming opportunities to get involved. And please reach out to us if you or someone you know has received discriminatory treatment from our police department so that we can learn from your experience and speak with you about potentially sharing your story to raise awareness of the problems we still need to address. So thank you for everyone in attendance tonight or listening to this after the fact for your attention and your commitment to making our community a better place for us all.
Thank you, Spencer, on behalf of Bray. I appreciate that. A reminder to our participants that you can ask questions by using the Q&A function in the chat, or the Q&A function. And we will definitely have a Q&A session toward this latter half of this program here. And on to our next community group, we're going to have Marguerite Jade from DARN. And in case you didn't know what DARN stood for, Developmental Assets Resource Network. Marguerite?
Hey, how are you? This is Marguerite with DARN. DARN's been around in Bexley for over 15 years. Our mission is to use community assets to meet community needs. We started with a conversation over winter jackets for when my son was a kindergartner at Montrose, and it's evolved into an equity-centered initiative supporting Bexley youth and families. We run completely confidential, so we offer emergency assistance to families around food, utilities, clothing. Generally what happens is school counselors send a confidential request that's generally approved and filled within 48 hours. So by the time they might request a family needs help with food, or needs utilities, needs sporting equipment, something like that, and we can generally turn it around in about 48 hours. We've done some things recently. We do glasses, we've done lice treatments, we've done tutoring, we do some school-based stuff, tutoring, college application and standardized test fees, athletic gear, we have a spirit wear initiative to make sure that every young person who engages in a sport in Bexley gets at least one piece of spirit wear. We used to do school supplies, but that's mostly been taken over by the PTOs. And we also used to make sure that students had musical instruments available, but that's been taken over by the music department. So when we first started about 15 years ago, there were a lot of unmet needs where that community members or the school district weren't really aware of or attuned to. And as we've been able to sort of impact policy and impact raise an awareness, there's been a lot of community members and city officials who have stepped up and sort of taken a lead in some of those things. We also offer holiday help where families can adopt other families and provide holiday gift cards and gifts. We've given away bikes for probably 10 years. We started probably, I think about 8 years ago, the Southwest Bexley Block Party as a way to more efficiently redistribute recycled bikes to community members. It's become a full-blown event with food, games, book giveaways. The City of Bexley and the Beck Recreation Department have partnered with us from the very beginning of that event. And over the years, our partnership has expanded to include local organizations, connecting the under-resourced and underserved Bexley families. The Bexley Police come and help us with licensing bikes. Bexley Schools has come and help support families and been part of the book giveaway. Bexley Library, Impact Community Action, Columbus Fire Department comes. So that's a annual event. This year, we didn't, COVID, we didn't have the big event. So we've done, we did just a more specific bike giveaway, and we were able to do that in both South Bexley and North Bexley. We have on several occasions, probably 2 or 3 times a year, outfitted entire apartments in a single weekend. So one of the things at Bexley, we have basically DARN's 3 old women in a truck, and families who are in crisis, who are moving to a new location for multiple reasons. We can post up on DARN's website the needs, and pretty much within a weekend, we can fill all furniture and housing, bedding, kitchen supplies, resources in a weekend. So one of the things about Bexley that makes DARN really able to meet needs of under-resourced communities is there is an enormous amount of resources in Bexley and a smaller proportion of families in need. What is also true is from a community perspective, the families in need in our community are often unseen, unheard, and underserved. And so what DARN tries to do is sort of bridge that gap. During the summer, we offer access to summer programming and pool passes. We've moved, in addition to responding to immediate needs, to also working with the district and the city to change policy so that we're disrupting sort of the systems that are in place that keep those families unheard, unseen, and under-resourced. Since COVID started, we've been providing gift cards and essential food, Kroger gift cards for food and cleaning supplies. We started that in March. We went through August. We're on hold right now until we can replenish our funds. We didn't quite plan, like most of us, for COVID to be.
Right. Good point, Marguerite. Now we can also reach you at darncares.org. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat. So I'll put our website in the chat. We have an upcoming, our hope is to start the food program again, or the food gift card program again, because we've had an enormous amount of need now that the unemployment and all the other eviction notices are no longer on hold. And we partnered with the city to try to find a way to make sure that all families have access to high-speed internet. So so that's a long, but I will put the website in there, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Thank you, Marguerite. I appreciate that very much. And let's go on to the Bexley DEI, 3 letters that are very common these days: diversity, equity, inclusion. And now let's talk with our dear friend, Stacy Grossman. Stacy?
Hi, my name is Stacy Grossman, and I am a co-chair of the Bexley DEI, or Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Organization. Our other co-chair is Jessica Willis, and we have an executive committee who includes Larry Diatley, Kate Mazar, Kathy Levine, and Akiza Fukuzawa. We wanted to thank you all for inviting us to speak at tonight's town hall. We are a group of Bexley residents who came together as a grassroots organization after the city's diversity and inclusion initiative disbanded. After disbanding, we regrouped and became a local grassroots organization. We're comprised of community members advocating for policies and practices that eliminate racism and all forms of inequities in Bexley. Our vision is that everyone in our community feels safe and is treated with respect and dignity in all contexts. We respect and value diverse life experiences and work to create an environment that is inclusive of all. Our committees research the problems in our community and identify best practices to address them. We seek to engage community members in understanding those problems and to build public support for policy changes. Over the summer, we worked with members of council, Matt Klingler, Monique Lamke, and Jen Robinson, as well as the mayor, to craft amendments on diversity, equity, and inclusion to the city's strategic plan. They were adopted in council's meeting August 11th. We also co-hosted a community discussion in August via Zoom called an Honest Dialogue About Race. It provided the community an opportunity to have an open and honest discussion with one another about race and discrimination. We submitted revisions to the Charter Review Committee in the hopes of following a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive method of city governance. And we're currently advocating for reforms to the Bexley Police Department and collaborating with community members to strategize efforts to expand affordable housing. Our goal as an organization is to work towards eliminating bias and discrimination within our community so that all who visit or live here feel welcome. And I can go ahead and add to the chat our email, our website, and how to get in touch with us on Facebook if any of you have any questions after this event. But thank you both. Thank you to the BMPA and to the city for inviting us to speak at tonight's town hall.
Thank you, Stacy, very much for that summary of activities. You guys have been quite busy this summer. And now let's go on to our next group, the Bexley LGBTQIA Family Ally Task Force. Where's Larry at?
Thank you, Dr. Baker.
Yep, there he is.
Hello. Hi, everyone. So just wanted to introduce our group, the LGBTQIA Family Ally Task Force. And, you know, I know there are a lot of letters in there, and that's really an umbrella term used to refer to many of the diverse members within our community as a whole. this particular group was brought together in early May around a specific situation that involved a member of our community during the protests that were happening in front of Dr. Acton's house that included homophobic language. And we actually that pulled the group together, and a great support of many people came together, and we quickly pulled together an agenda to address that particular situation with City Hall at the May 12th meeting. And we were encouraged by the response of the city to listen to our requests, which included starting the DE&I group back up, issuing an apology to the family that was involved, who felt that the situation was not handled well, hosting a town hall meeting, which we're happy to be a part of tonight, as well as implementing an independent committee or commission to oversee policies and practices of our Bexley Police Department. And many of these are the same issues that are being sought by the other minority communities represented here tonight. So we are grateful to be allied with pretty much everybody that's presenting tonight to rally around our community to make sure that it is as inclusive as possible. For our group, aside from that, from what we accomplished in early May, I know Jessica has been talking with City Council, and I have been thinking about it over the last couple of months that our vision really needs to be focused around two things. First is advocacy to ensure that our city and our schools are following policies that support, include, and are sensitive to our LGBTQIA members of the Bexley community. And then the second thing is have more of a social focus that provides this community opportunities to get together, share experiences, enjoy one another's company, raise the visibility of our community within Bexley, and meet and interact with our neighbors and allies, because I know there are a lot of allies within Bexley. We are new, so we are just formulating our agenda, and so anyone that would be interested in joining us, we do have a Facebook page available that's on the slide here. I'm happy to answer questions during Q&A. We do have the start of an agenda, and we'll be meeting with City Council soon to talk about some of the things that they're thinking about as well. So we look forward to all the community engagement and all the good work that our fellow groups are doing here tonight. So we thank the city and BMPA for putting this town hall on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Larry. Now, this next trio is quite a group here. They are like the liaisons between the city council and the community groups. So we have here the Bexley trio of Matt, Jen, and Monique.
Great. Thanks so much, Dr. Baker. My name is Monique Lamke, and I am one of your Bexley City Council members. We have now for several years had established council liaisons between a certain member of City Council and different advocacy groups. The point of having a council liaison is just to really have an additional point of contact, so that if there's an advocacy group that we are assigned to, that we reach out to them. Perhaps they have not interacted with City Council before, but it's really an opportunity to have increased discussions and contact with them. As Larry just mentioned, he and I were exchanging some emails this morning because I am one of the council liaisons to the LGBTQIA group, so I look forward to working with him. I am the council liaison to not only LGBTQIA, but also to the Bexley Anti-Racist Project, and I'm very excited to work with them.
All right, Matt, you snooze, you lose. I'm going to jump in. Hi, all. I'm Jen Robinson. I won't repeat what Monique just said, but I will say that I am a city council member. I am also the chair of the Safety and Health Committee for City Council. So there's a lot going on right now, and I am really, really honored, to, quite frankly, to be liaisons to both the Bexley Minority Parent Alliance group and the DEI, and have had opportunities over the summer to do some really great work with both of those groups. And I look forward to continuing that work and to continuing to build relationships between the city and all of the really wonderful advocacy groups that have grown up in our community over the last 6 to 9 months. So thanks for having me, and Matt, you're up.
Thanks, Jen. I'm Matt Klingler. I'm also a city council member. I first want to say that I was proud to be a part of the DEI group that amended the city's strategic plan, and we set some defined and measurable goals with action items for the city and the diversity and advocacy groups that I'm proud of, and that I look forward to meeting those goals. I'm also looking forward to continuing to work with Stephen Francis and Mayor Kessler to explore new ways to diversify our city's purchasing and operating procedures. I am the council concierge to the DARN group, so I look forward to meeting Marguerite and the other folks over there and helping in any way that I can. Thank you for your time, and I will listen.
Great. So I just want to give a big thank you to all our community groups for participating and giving us updates. You can find their contact information, emails, websites, etc., in the PDF file that will be distributed at the end. So be sure to get in contact and to ask all your questions of them and get involved. I think now we are going to transition to from what the community was doing to what Bexley City Hall has been doing in terms of diversity, equity, and justice initiatives, both with the mayor and with the police. I'll kick it off to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Courtney. So we're going to cover several things we've been working on over the past years and months in the areas of equity and justice and inclusion and diversity in the city. We'll start with something that Matt just alluded to, and I'm going to ask Monique Lampke, who was also heavily involved in that, to kind of pitch in and talking about this. But several years ago, we partnered with other organizations in the city and residents to work on a strategic plan amendment around diversity and inclusion. And that draft document was finalized in, I believe, the end of last year, and then went to City Council to review. And through this past 6 months has really benefited from input and feedback from our grassroots community groups, especially the DE&I group. So Monique, if you want to talk a little bit about what is in that strategy and what that process looked like.
Thank you, Mayor. I would be happy to. As chair of the Strategic and Judiciary Committee, the resolution 620 to adopt our strategic plan came to me, and I reached out to council members Robinson and Klingler to assist me with that. Throughout the summer, we had a series of meetings with the leadership of the DEI that Stacey Grossman just alluded to a few minutes ago. And we really came up with a collaborative document which really set 4 priorities for how we wanted to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion here in Bexley. The first goal was really trying to welcome new residents and being proactive to not only ensure safety and security, but also to create opportunities for engagement and sharing in our diverse experiences here in the community. A second goal was focusing on police and community relations and trying to expand ways that we could encourage forward-thinking community engagement between our residents, our police, and increasing our focus on transparency and reaching those segments of the community that have been historically vulnerable to bias. The third goal that we collectively came up with was to create a greater inclusive Bexley community. We wanted to make sure that we were making every effort to combat racism and discrimination, and that we were treating everyone with compassion and reasonableness, and also trying to keep an open mind as much as possible. And then the fourth goal was really focused on reforming internal city policies and operations. As Councilmember Klingler just mentioned a few minutes ago, one of the things that we've talked about with respect to that fourth goal was trying to not only increase the diversity of city staff and individuals who volunteer their precious time to serve on our boards, commissions, and committees, also requiring annual training of city staff and elected officials, but also performing a purchasing audit and creating policies so that we can expand the scope of purchasing from minority-owned businesses. And then we also thought, as part of Goal 4, that we wanted to ensure transparency and objective fact findings for any incidents of reported police bias. With those 4 goals, and with the collective input of the leadership of DEI, which I believe was comprised of other leadership of other advocacy groups, we came up with a meaningful, substantive document. And I'm proud to say that your city council unanimously voted to pass that, as Monique Williams mentioned, at the August 11th city council meeting. We'll continue to make every effort to put that plan into place and to continue to listen.
Thank you, Monique. So we're going to cover several other things we've been working on. And one of the things that's really been at the center of a lot of the work over the past several months has been a reform in the way that the city processes complaints. And this is complaints across the board for any department of the city, but it does include the police department. The reason it's important to us to be able to hear complaints and to be able to investigate incidents of bias or discrimination or really any improper incidents on the part of city employees is because in doing so, not only can we get to the root of issues that are occurring, but we can also hold our staff accountable. It's important to us that as we learn about any incidents that occur, that we're able to follow up with those incidents, both to the victims, but also to employees that may have been involved in that. And so for many years, of course, we've had a complaint process, but we modernized it into the 1990s by putting it online back in 2018. And then this year we made the form easier to fill out. We made sure that it was ubiquitous across our website. So it shows up in all sorts of sidebars throughout the website. And then we wanted to make sure that anyone filling that form out would understand that it was going to be received and that there was an accountability matrix in place for that. And so the first thing that we did was we announced the creation of the Bexley Citizen Review Advisory Board. The way this functions is that if the complaint has been filed with the city and the city reviews it and then provides a response to the complainant, and the complainant doesn't feel satisfied with that response, feels that that response is inadequate or that they're not being heard or that there needs to be further investigation and follow-up, they have the right to appeal that decision. The format that we have in place is that that appeal would go from the department to me as the administrator of the city. And so what I did was I created a Citizens Review Advisory Board via executive order on June 9th. And the reason for that was instead of just going straight to my office where I would review something, I wanted to create a third-party transparent mechanism where we would have a review board of citizens that would review the complaint. They would have full access to all of the records that we had access to internally. And their findings and their report are a matter of public record to be published on our website. I chose a diverse group of residents with a diverse skill set and with diverse experiences to serve on that review advisory board. And it went into effect immediately on June 9th. This is a process that I had been thinking about for a while. We'd put together some thoughts on it and some notes and started socializing it internally a year or two ago. And in the wake of everything that's been going on in our country, we had a moment where we were able to move forward with this and push forward with something that in the past had been difficult to achieve. So I'm proud of this board, and I want to introduce you to its members. First off, I'd like to introduce you to Brian Drury. Brian, are you with us? Oh, yeah.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Ben. My name is Brian Drury. I'm a longtime resident of Bexley, live on Grandin Avenue. I'm currently the president of the Bexley Minority Parent Alliance. I'm a trustee with the Historical Society and former president of the Bexley Athletic Boosters. One of the things from there is that I am a concerned citizen who has done a lot of different things for the community. And one of the things I'm really believe is I'm a servant of the community. And so I was blessed to take on this responsibility and definitely spent the time to research and be involved with the city. So I'm gonna turn it over to Becky.
Thank you. So I'm Becky Guzman, and my day job, I've been with the Franklin County Public Defender for about 20 years now, law clerk and attorney time there. So I really enjoy advocating for others. I'm a member of the Supreme Court of Ohio's Language Services Committee. I've raising third generation Bexley residents. And my 30 seconds is over. Thank you.
And we also have with us tonight, Lee Nathans. Lee, you're on mute right now.
There we go. I'm Lee Nathans. I live on South Remington Road. I've been a Bexley resident since 1984. But before that, I earned a master's degree in police administration. I worked at teaching school in inner city Cleveland for the Cleveland Police Department and was also on the staff of the Howard University Medical School. So I'm aware of disparities faced by minorities in education, healthcare, and the administration of justice. Since 2007, I've been a member of the Bexley Civil Service Commission, and as such have been tasked with responsibilities of selecting police officers with character and ability. I'm delighted to be a member of the Citizen Review Advisory Board. I am committed to having our Bexley city employees accountable and treating every citizen with respect and dignity. Thanks.
Thank you, Lee. I want to say, something that all of the members of the CRB have in common is, and that I've appreciated in knowing them over the years, is their commitment to impartiality, their commitment to listening and learning. And I've seen it exhibited in every single one of the members of the Citizen Review Advisory Board. Brian Drury over the years has been somebody who's always sought me out and shared experiences that he's heard about and looked to try to figure out how we can work together in improving city processes and relationships with the community. Becky Guzman has been a great advisor on mayor's court reforms that we're going to talk about here in a little bit, and has shown herself to be a fair and open-minded and incredibly intelligent, of course, like all these members throughout that process. And Lee Nathans, while you heard his background in law enforcement administration, his consistent support for the concept of law enforcement, Lee has also been very quick to always talk about, if there's a problem, we need to fix it. If there's something that needs to be adjusted, we have to adjust it. We need to be on the cutting edge of best practices. We need to be seeking to constantly improve. And so that's a consistent message among all of these board members. And I'm grateful to have them serving in this capacity. So creating a CRB was a step in the right direction. But another piece of the complaint process that we kept hearing about was the difficulty of anyone who's obviously been a victim of any improper abuse of power, discrimination, bias, is going to be reticent to complain, especially to the department that was the initiator of that issue. And so we needed to be fair to employees to get a fair hearing on any complaint, but also we wanted to create a system where complainants felt that they had security, that they had even the potential for confidentiality, and that they had the ability to understand the process and make informed decisions from a third party that could give them good, solid advice. And so we created something that we sort of dreamt up as we talked through how to solve that problem. And that is we created our complaint liaison program. Started to brainstorm that right alongside the creation of the Citizen Review Advisory Board. Took a month or two to interview several different candidates to the position. We were initially thinking we would have one complaint liaison, and we ended up with two. So I want to introduce you this evening to Sam Marcelino and Mary Younger, and ask you guys to just talk a little bit about your background and what makes you interested in this program.
Well, Sam, you want me to start?
Go ahead.
All right. So my name is Mary Younger, and I just retired from the Franklin County Public Defender's Office after spending my entire career there doing criminal defense work. So I've done indigent work for my whole career, and my husband was a law enforcement officer for pretty much his entire career. He was 34 years as a law enforcement officer. So my family basically has been criminal defense and law enforcement. And, and my present family lives in Bexley. They live on North Remington. And more importantly, my 18-month granddaughter will be going to Maryland. So I have much interest in what happens in Bexley at this particular time, because the people who I love the most right now live there. But I've always, that aside, my interest in individual rights through my criminal defense are very important to me, and that's what's caused me to want to be involved in this particular position. And hopefully I can do something. Thank you. Sam.
As I said earlier, I am a graduate of Bexley High School, and I currently reside in Bexley with my wife down the street from Mr. Drury. Professionally, I'm an attorney at the law firm of Bark and Meislich in Columbus, Ohio, where I represent individuals in various matters throughout the state and country. You know, my interest in this position, as I've said before, came from a personal experience, but it wasn't one that I had in Bexley. It was another city. After interaction with police, I truly felt discriminated against. And when I went to file a complaint with that city against the police department, I essentially got a call from the police chief who completely ignored my concerns. And that interaction alone was enough to ensure that I never return, I'll never return to that city. And personally, I never want anyone to have that same experience here in Bexley. So therefore, this program really means a lot to me, as I find it integral to ensuring that Bexley is a welcoming place for each and every person that enters its city limits. So please, for those of you who have joined us tonight, if you have any questions, any issues, any concerns, please, please, please reach out to Mary or myself. Our position really can only be successful if we hear from you. This is kind of, this is a little ad lib, so to speak, but please stay out the buzz and make something happen by reaching out to the people that can truly help you. We really are here to help, and nothing can get done by complaining on Facebook. We want to be here and be your liaison through the process. So please, we look forward to hearing from you if you need us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mary. I want to share with anyone who's on the call, the complaint process is outlined on the city website under bexley.org/complaint, or you could just find it in the drop down on the About menu. We are about to redo our website, so that might be slightly different in the coming months. But on that website, it goes through how to file a complaint. It goes through the complaint liaison program, along with the information sheet associated that has the complaint form, and how to handle it if you're unsatisfied with that complaint. On the information sheet for our complaint liaison program, our contact information, phone numbers, emails for the complaint liaison members that you just met this evening. So again, our hope in having created this program, both the Citizen Review Advisory Board and the complaint liaison program, is to have created an environment where we're systemically getting rid of barriers to getting to the root of issues that occur in the city and making sure that everyone is accountable, no matter their position. It's incredibly important to us. And so we'll continue to work on that. We'll continue to pursue that mission and that goal. And I'm going to pass this back to you, Courtney.
Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for sharing too. I think it is exciting and exhilarating to see how many things can come out of, being able to put our heads together, be able to work to move forward. The first town hall that we had seems like forever ago, back in June 11th. And one of the things that came out of it was just that the community was so concerned about what Bexley would be doing as far as community policing and keeping us fair and equitable for all of our citizens and the people that live in and around Bexley as well. So much has happened since the George Floyd, since his death. There have been protests, probably thousands upon thousands of protests. And that's great because people are getting to voice their opinions. But the thing that we really want to see is what kinds of effectual changes will be made. So now we're going to kind of transition into letting both the mayor and the chief of police speak about the concrete solid things that they've been doing to make changes here within Bexley. I'll start off with the mayor.
I'm actually going to pass it over to the chief. We're going to talk about one of our commitments at the last town hall was to provide a report to the community and also to publish our police policies online. Chief, you want to talk about that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I am Chief Reinhardt, if you don't know me. The community group that I have the honor of representing tonight are the professional, dedicated men and women of the Bexley Police Department, the people that have delivered incredible service to our community for more years than I have been there. I'm excited to talk about the police report to the community titled the 2020 Community Policing Report. It's a 4-part report. 3 parts are on the website now, the city website now, and I believe the 4th will be up there very soon. It is packed full of information that explains a lot of questions people have had, a lot of misinformation that's been in our community about the police department and how we do business. And if you're concerned about any of those issues, and you haven't had a chance to look at this document, I sure hope you do. Just a few of the highlights from the table of contents it speaks about the training of our police department. Our hiring and training of our officers is second to none anywhere. That information doesn't often get out, and it's detailed in this report. Demographic data that explains why some of our traffic stops and some of our activity don't appear to fairly mirror the demographics of our community. They include a lot of other information. The Ohio Collaborative, our organization was one of the first to meet the certification requirements of the Ohio Collaborative. That information is in this report. Talks about our detective bureau, some of the things that they do, property crime statistics, arrests, officer recruitment, and officer diversity. Our police department, and I'm very proud of this, and I hope you are too, we have over 16% of our sworn officers are not white. We're a very diverse agency, and that happened because we attract some of the top tier, finest candidates anywhere, even from out of state. Calls for service, use of force statistics, we have a minimal amount of use of force, and I'll speak about that a little bit later tonight. Vehicular, pedestrian, and bicycle safety and accident data, citizens' complaints. Our actual complaints are minimal. The stories that are told in the community never made it to us by complaints, but I'm telling you, our complaints, the actual where somebody steps up and complains are minimal. Community engagement, 2020 initiatives, some of the things we're doing, our participation in the Bexley Whitehall Narcotics Partnership, the effects of that. There's just great information in the report. The Mayor's Court report, organizational structure, and our organizational profile. And I do have to say, we're a small police department. We're lean by design, and the majority of our budget dollars go to police services on the street. We don't have a lot of people in the building. We don't have a large administrative staff. So actually, when it came to compiling this incredible document, I owe great kudos to our mayor, who took from his time and spent a ton of time packaging all this good information into a format that's accessible and understandable. And as I said, critically, it explains and some of the misinformation that has been floating around in our community. So I really would urge you to take time, read this report, especially when you hear stories about us that don't sound quite right. Read the report. I think you'll really be enlightened. Police policies. One of the commitments we made were to post our police policies online. We partnered with a national company called Lexipol several years ago to help us ensure that our policies meet state and federal guidelines, and that our policies aren't biased and do not promote any type of discriminatory activity. And that's been a great partnership with us. It's still very much a work in progress, and we are working hard to adapt some of the best policies that were recommended to us by Lexipol. Those policies, I think it's like 545 pages of policy, are now posted online. You can access those at on the city website. So again, I need to thank the mayor for all of his hard work and dedication. He took a vacation and worked about 60 hours a week during his vacation, helping us put this together. And I'm incredibly appreciative of that. Your Honor.
Thank you, Chief. I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I'm going to push back on something you said. So one of the things you mentioned was, and it is true, that we have a very small number of formal complaints, and that is detailed in the report. But you also mentioned informal complaints, or I think you might have said Facebook. And I think you and I both know that there are complaints that we hear through the grapevine or through Facebook that, sometimes it's really hard for us to figure out what occurred or when it occurred. Sometimes it's maybe a little bit easier, but there's a larger number of complaints that don't show up in the formal process. Would you agree with that, Chief?
Oh, yes, sir. And as you know, and many members of our community and our council know, even when we hear a rumor of a complaint, we do everything we can to find out the facts surrounding that incident. We've had body cameras for more than a year. We've had in-car digital cameras with audio recording for a lot of years. Those two items themselves have dispelled some of the rumors in our community. They've helped clarify and actually exonerate police officers on incidents that never rose to being a complaint. We're very fact-driven. And whenever I hear anything, and whenever the mayor or city council members hear anything, a complaint, and how, especially if it is race-based, I mean, that's our biggest concern. And we look for body camera footage, and we look for car camera footage, and we keep that footage for a while. So we have been able to dispel some rumors in our community, and I'm very glad that we have. Those cameras have served us very well.
And I think, Chief, one of the reasons for the complaint process honing and the expansion with the Citizen Advisory Board and with the complaint liaisons is, I think it's important that when any resident, any citizen feels that they have not been treated fairly, that the best way for us to address that is through that formal process, so that we can, if there has been an issue, so that we can go through a disciplinary process, and the accountability that is so needed would be able to be put in place. And so I guess I just wanted to point that out, that there's a difference in a formal complaint and an informal complaint. While we will, and we do, look into anything we hear about, going through a formal process allows us, through our collective bargaining negotiated agreements, to go through a formal discipline if indicated. So I just wanted to point to that. And I know Courtney's probably about to tell me I'm running out of time on this topic. So, we just talked about, obviously, we talked about enforcement. We talked about the complaint process, but there's a whole nother branch of this entire process that often does not go discussed or addressed. And that is our mayor's court. Now, mayor's court is a little bit of a misnomer. I just want to make that clear. It is not presided over by the mayor. We have a professional paid magistrate, thank goodness. who sits in mayor's court. We have our own prosecuting attorney, and we've made a couple changes so that our mayor's court is coming in line with some real cutting edge practices in order to make sure that it's a just, maximally just and equitable court. So the difference between mayor's court and going downtown to Franklin County is that basically most misdemeanors go through our local courts and they don't go down to the county. So misdemeanors can include vehicular accidents, speeding tickets, theft, certain types of even domestic violence fall under the misdemeanor code as opposed to felony. And so we've, over the past several years, been enacting reforms that are truly putting us above other mayor's courts in Ohio, and in fact, providing a higher level of service than the county court system. Two major reforms that I want to talk about is the first one that we put in place last year is we began to staff a public defender. We're the only court in Central Ohio that does this. I actually don't know of any others in Ohio, but there certainly could be. Our public defender is on site during mayor's court hours. If any defendant comes in and passes the same income test that they would pass at the county under a felony charge to get a public defender, they're given access to a public defender. And our public defender works with them and for them. I believe that this is an incredibly important piece of our justice puzzle. And it's one that I'm really happy we put this piece in place so that everybody has access to legal assistance, even for charges that might not seem large at the face of it. The reality is that there is a circular imprisonment of debt that occurs in our judicial system with indigent defendants who can't pay for court fees and costs and end up trapped by a cycle of inability to get a license, inability to pay, bench warrants, and we are doing everything we can on our part to make sure that we're not perpetuating that environment in Bexley. The public defender is a big piece of that. The next thing we've been working on since last year, and we're currently incorporating into our court rules, is a fee and fine-free court in Bexley. And what this is not that nobody ever has to pay a fee, but if you can't afford fees, if you are within the indigent population or you pass the same income threshold that you would pass for a public defender eligibility, what we're doing is we're giving you as the defendant the right, the express right, not just maybe an option of the magistrate, but you have the right to, in lieu of payment, to serve public service at a living wage, not at a minimum wage, but at a calculated living wage. You would be able to serve public service in lieu of court fees and fines. Again, an incredibly important piece of getting defendants away from the debt prison that is currently occurring in our judicial system. It's not just a local phenomenon. This is happening at the county level, probably more so. But even though we are a small jurisdiction, even though we have a small footprint, we wanted to make sure that we're doing our part not to perpetuate that. We've made other reforms in mayor's court, from hiring a new prosecutor, working to expand victims' advocacy services to victims, and we'll continue to do that. Just this week, I learned from talking to a prosecutor about several other items for us to explore, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, sorry, Brian.
Yes. So we just kind of wanted to talk about our police listening sessions. So I didn't know if you had anything else.
Okay. Yes. I do think it's really important, Brian, that we cover this last slide. And Chief, if I'm going to put it back over to you, if we can talk about the review of our police policy and our practice.
I'm trying to get this to work again, Mayor. The review of our police policy and our practice, sir. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir.
Is my mute on? Our review of our policy certainly has partnered us with, again, I said Lexipol. We have changed. We've changed all of our use of force to mirror 8 can't wait, and we train to that standard. I mean, and of course, we train on all of our policy every day through questions. Lexipol's another service that Lexipol provides to us. Every officer has to answer a series of questions every day on the policies we highlight. And in most recent times, of course, it's been anti-bias, diverse policing, those type issues. that we're continually reminding our police officers of. You know, I'm quick to say they're some of the finest people in law enforcement anywhere. And that's because of our training, our hiring, and our training program, but they're not perfect people. None of us are perfect people. And they need reminded. They need reminded in how we communicate with the diverse elements of our community, how that impacts somebody. And we do that through policy training. Does that make any sense to you, Mayor?
Yeah. So through policy training, and then I think we talked about, you know, we've been talking for years, but over the past several months about some other policies and practices that we're looking at. You just talked about communication. I think we've been talking about field interview practice and understanding and empathy. We've even been looking at maybe in lieu of enforced static speed enforcement, looking at traffic cameras as a way to take officer discretion away from that particular field and to go kind of beyond and focus not so much on those main and broad corridors, but focus on more traditional community policing. And then I don't know if you want to add anything to that, Chief. You know, one of the things you were about to say, I think you were talking about culture and about you moving culture through training and through practice and policy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, sir. I was on the wrong slide, but you have the correct slide right in front of me. I was looking at another computer. Sorry about that. But you know, I said, speaking about police culture, from our last town hall, I said you can't change culture. And I said that in a casual moment. I don't know who I was speaking to. That's not the point I meant to convey. The point I tried to make and failed miserably at during our last town hall meeting was culture, organizational culture is incredibly hard to change. Yes, it can be changed. It's incredibly hard. And I was speaking of my good fortune when I came to the Bexley Police Department in 2007. I was speaking of my good fortune that the culture there was that of a community policing organization. I mean, this organization was burrowed into the tactics of community policing before it was even a buzzword. And now it's certainly an overused buzzword in law enforcement. But what I mean by community policing was our officers have always made it their mainstay to know our residents, to know who they are, to be friendly with them, to wave at our residents, to help them in any way we can, well beyond the standard elements of law enforcement. And I think anybody watching this from our community knows, anybody who's been in Bexley for a long period of time knows, we have been able to hire and retain some of the finest individuals in law enforcement anywhere. So that was my point, that I was so fortunate to inherit that here already. Yes, culture can be changed, but our basic culture of community policing in the Bexley Police Department is just incredible. When the world blew up over George Floyd and incidents before and after, I thought we have a police department that can be held up as a model of how loving and caring and being empathetic in your community should look. We haven't been able to make that happen, but the men and women of our organization are certainly worthy of that. Now, I know in my heart, I know the police officer discretion when it comes to traffic citations and traffic enforcement, police officer discretion by good, professional, non-biased police officers is the very best tool for everybody. But I understand there are some parts of our community that think we're not unbiased, and they question who we write tickets to and the cars that we stop, the drivers that we stop. And that's why we're researching static traffic cameras, speed cameras that do that work without any officer interaction. I have mixed emotions about it, but I know, Mayor, you and I and many others are committed to making certain our community knows that we're committed to a non-biased environment for our residents.
Thank you, Chief. And knowing that we're running along on time here, I think the last thing we wanted to cover was listening sessions that we've been developing now for several months. And here with us today, we have some of our organizers, facilitators of the session, and Brian Drury is going to kick us off on that.
Thank you, Ben. So the BMPA has been working with the Bexley Police Department and our facilitators over the past 2 months to kind of establish guidelines and, what should go into that. So we wanted to make certain that, when people come to these sessions, they feel comfortable. They don't feel that, they are going to be grilled by the officers about a specific situation and be listened to. And so we wanted to develop a program that would so allow the people to listen and be heard, but also take some of those actions and plans from that process and share that back with the police from there so that we establish. So we are very, very fortunate from there that, and I had the opportunity to work with both of them, Sean Carter and Diane Strassler for there, who have, been able to bring us to this whole process. So I'm going to introduce them and let them take over.
Diane, you want to start kind of talking about what you've been working on, and then I'll talk about kind of where our next steps.
Sure. So first of all, I'd like to say what an honor and a privilege it is to be with all of you this evening. And I'm quite delighted that I'm with a group of people who are truly dedicated to getting themselves in some good trouble to make a difference in the world. So these listening sessions were a dream child of our mayor, who's quite the visionary, to include a therapist in this whole movement. He called me one day after a meeting and he said, "Diane, I've just gotten out of a meeting and nobody was listening to each other. And I'm wondering if you can help us with that." And so I've been a psychotherapist for many years. The name of my business is Successful Relationships. And I've worked with groups all over the country on establishing and maintaining good relationships, even in the face of conflict. And so I'm going to read to you the goal of our listening sessions. And it is, the goal of the listening session is to build bridges of understanding and trust between the police department and members of Bexley minority community, to inform future police policy and practice, to have discussions that will result in healing and change at the individual and collective level, and to move past hurt and towards creating a new dynamic between our police department and all of our citizens. So as Brian mentioned, there's been a lot of work behind the scenes. We met with the BMPA, I think 2 or 3 times this summer, trying to come up with a program that would make sense for our community to participate in. I've personally met with, I believe, 22 police officers to just talk to them and tell them a little bit about what we're doing and get their input. Mayor Kessler asked us initially to focus on a theme of listening that leads to understanding, that leads to empathizing. And so we have come up with a program, Sean and I, where we are ready to launch on Monday. Our sessions will be held at the Bexley Public Library in the auditorium. We're asking people to commit to 3 sessions in the series. And our hope is to help people to really listen to each other, even when there might be conflict or a diverse opinion, to really just sit and be able to listen. And we want to ask questions that lead to answers that the whole community can use in order to build the bridge that we want to build between our minority citizens and the police department. And we think it's vitally important that community members have as much input as possible. So we're hoping that we're going to have representatives from all socioeconomic groups come to these meetings. I think it's important that we can have these different groups represented. It's so easy to get middle and upper middle class people involved, and it's harder sometimes when people are struggling in their own life to get them involved in things like this. But that's our goal, to have a real representative group from the community. I'm in the process of creating a handbook that I would like to give our citizens that have resources in them. And so I would ask if you have anything that you think would be beneficial to include in the handbook. I would really love to receive that from you. Our first session is going to be Monday, this coming Monday, and we are fully aware that this is going to be a program that gets developed over time. It's going to take a while. Any change takes a while, and developing any program takes a while. And so I would really welcome any input from you on what you'd like to see included in this program. So thank you again for the honor of being included in this wonderful group. Okay, Sean?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I recognize that we're on a short timeline. So there's a really quickly what I'll say is that there's this tension between talking and doing. And what my intent for this process is to be kind of threading the needle between those two tensions and recognizing that in order for us to actually develop a plan that's actionable, that can hold folks accountable and can be mindful of the lived experiences of your citizenry, you have to first create the conditions that will provide that information. And so what my goal is to foster the environment where folks can be two things: one, safe, but then also brave. And the only way that you can do that is if you put structure into the environment. And that structure allows for the thoughtful dialogue and engagement that will kind of unearth some of those things that have been buried for quite a long time. I've heard us talk about the murder of George Floyd, and I've heard us talk about how it kind of compelled these various agencies or these organizations to come together to rally around the citizens of Bexley. But the one thing that's true is that the individual citizen needs voice too. And the individual citizen needs a platform to amplify their voice and their concerns, and then taking that information and turning it into something real. And so that's the hope for the listening sessions, is how do you go about doing that? Diane did a good job of kind of laying out how that goes or how that process will look. So I won't go down that road again, but I'll say that my expertise in this space has evolved over time. And I've had the good fortune of working in complex environments, both in my professional world of child welfare, but also as a consultant in the educational arena, and also serving as a community safety commissioner for the city of Columbus, as well as serving on the chief of police for the city of Columbus advisory board. And so bringing that perspective and that understanding of not only what it means to hear what your constituents are saying, but then apply that to complex environments is going to be an important aspect to develop the nuance needed in order to create a plan that is one, actionable, but then also sustainable over time. And so that's the goal that I have for this work. And I think the reality is that the quality of that process is only reliant on the participation of the citizens. And so whatever we need to do to make that true, for those who don't often get heard, we have to make those concessions possible. So, whether these locations change or whether we change hours, all those things are on the table for us to make sure that we're reaching the constituents that need amplified and need access to these conversations, so that we can really unearth the things that are important to our city as we move forward. So thanks, Brian.
That over to from there, Monica with Q&A.
Yes, thank you, Brian. We do have a number of questions that have been posted, some of which I think have been answered during the course of the evening. So I will just jump right in and direct the first question to the mayor and to the police chief. Thank you, Greg. We appreciate you participating and posting a question. The question is, what changes have been made as a result of investigations into complaints that were determined to be valid? I'll repeat the question. What changes have been made as a result of investigations into complaints that were determined to be valid? I will say that our time is kind of limited, so we'll try to get a quick answer. Chief, Mayor?
Oh, okay, I was deferring to the mayor, but I'll go ahead and speak to that. Monica, thank you. You know, the biggest change that has been made to complaints that were concerned to be valid were in how we communicate with people of color, people of minority status in our community. Sometimes some of the things that we say in the routine practice of police business aren't received the way that we intended for them to be received. So we've had to relook and rethink our empathy, how we speak to people, how some of the phrases that we use could be offensive to people. That's one of the biggest, most immediate changes that we talk about every day.
Thank you, Chief. Mayor, is there anything else that you would like to add, or do you think the chief covered it?
No, I think the chief covered it. I'd like to again state that, like, if you look at the complaint stats from our police report, we've had a very few formal complaints, and so we do feel it important to get complaints that are formal so that we can go through a full investigation process in that. But I think that communication empathy has been a continuous learning lesson. I think as we look at practice and as we look at the ways that we interact with different segments of our community and different ways that we're communicating and spin of our policing duties, I think that the more we understand the concerns, the more that we see and observe interactions that cause trauma, that cause a rift between us and our minority community, the more that we can learn as an agency and the more that we can develop and continue to hone our practices.
Thank you, Mayor. The next question comes from Carmen, and she would like to know, how are incidents that are perceived as being racially biased differentiated from incidents that are actually racially biased?
Is that for me, Monica? Police
Yes,
incidents?
Yes, sir. That question, I believe, is directed to the police department.
Gosh, well, we look at them all the same way because you never know whether it was really racially biased or just perceived to be that way. And it's one thing for me to feel confident that something's not biased because I know the men and women of the agency, I work by their side, but we know that's not good enough. My residents need to know it was not intentionally biased. So I think whenever there's a story in the community that we hear or there's a complaint, we approach it and treat it as though it's the real thing until we have evidence or recordings that prove otherwise. So we treat them the same way.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you very much. The next question I will direct to the coordinators of the listening sessions. And it is, what happened to the first round of listening sessions? That question has come from an anonymous attendee. So the question is, what happened with the first round of listening sessions? Diane and Mayor?
I think this was maybe alluding to, there was a comment I read or somebody forwarded me on Facebook that the listening sessions had already stopped or something, and we were still in the process of Monica planning with you and other members of BMPA, so we hadn't yet started them. So, and as Diane and Sean talked about, they haven't. The first round, the first group of I think 6 or 7 participants is beginning next week. Diane and Sean, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, the first round is beginning this Monday at 6 o'clock. There was no other first round. We have been trying to plan these sessions all summer long. So we are very happy that we're now ready to take the sessions to the community at last. So this will be the first round. So for people who are listening, please contact me and sign up. I would be very happy to meet you and have you be a participant.
The only thing I'll add is that in order for a process to be sustained, it must be intentional. And so the planning that goes into putting listening sessions together has to be thoughtful and it has to be compelling, but it also has to be organized in order for it to be sustained. And so I think the role that I want to play in this is to ensure that it's sustainable because we're putting together a thoughtful process so that when you come, you are, one, welcome, but then also feel like you're a part of something that's going to go somewhere. And it's not just another opportunity for you to vent. It's really expressing and getting involved in dialogue that will lead to some change.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your responses.
Do we have a time for the listening sessions?
Yeah, so I just wanted to point out that on the front page of our website at the top, and we'll keep this at the top and we'll continue to advertise it through the newsletter and some various resources, is how to get involved in the listening session. So there's an online form. This is right at the front page of Bexley.org. You would go to that form and fill out information about what you hope to accomplish, and then Diane or Sean will contact you. And so that is how to get involved. And the times are set with different people have different schedules. And so one of the things that Sean and Diane are doing is working around schedules to make sure that we can get groups together at right times for different groups. So they're part of that as well.
Thank you, sir. We're going to try to clip. We do have a couple more questions. I know we want to respect everyone's time and end promptly, but I do want to get through a couple more questions. The next question is for the sheriff from an anonymous attendee. And the question is, Sheriff, do you feel the racial reform issues that other groups are stating on this call are an issue or are not an issue and are more of a misunderstanding?
You know, if somebody in our community thinks they're an issue, then they're an issue. And as I said earlier, while I know the men and women of the agency and I may think it's a misunderstanding, it's an issue as long as our community thinks it is. And it's my goal, my job, to try and explain and give information, whether it be recordings or whatever we have, to show to people in our community that what it really is, whether it's valid or whether it's not. So yes, it's an issue.
Thank you, sir. I think I'm going to ask two more questions very quickly. Another from an anonymous attendee, and I'm going to direct this question to our city council member, Ms. Jen Robinson. The person says, I've been a resident for 15 years and have never heard of a police officer going and meeting my kids at a school. I don't know any of their names.
Yeah. Well, I can say that there's not, in my time in council and my time in being in Bexley, there's not been a formal program. And Chief, maybe you can give me some more information on this if there is more to give. There's not been a formal program where officers will go to particular schools and interact with kids at particular times. But I do know that there has been times over the past years when officers will go to particularly like Montrose and they'll be playing basketball with the kids on the playground, and I believe that there actually was a program with Montrose Elementary where the students would do field trips to the Bexley Police Department. And that is something that we've actually been discussing in kind of the planning phases, building more educational opportunities for our police officers and the youth of our community so that we don't have people who live in our community who aren't familiar with the police that are there to serve and protect. So I think the answer to that question is it really depends on where you live and what programs each of the individual schools may have organized, and it's something that's certainly on the radar and something that we would like to continue doing as we move forward.
Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. The next question is from Ms. Amber Tony, and this question is specifically directed towards the police department, and it is, how can we trust there will not be a shooting of a Black individual in our community?
You know, again, that's a good question.
How can we trust there will not be a shooting of a Black individual in our community?
That's a good question, and I appreciate that question because I know it's near and dear to the heart of many of our residents. They say past performance is the strongest indicator of future performance. This police department has never shot. In fact, we've only had one shooting incident in its history, and it was not a person of color. We train very hard. We train quarterly we train more with our firearms than any surrounding agency. And we train to not use that level of force unless an officer has to do it to save his life or somebody else's life. That's a top training issue with us. We have never shot a black resident or a black person coming through town. And I can tell you right now, that will never happen in this agency unless the officer has to use that level of force to save somebody's life. As I said, past performance, we've never done it.
Thank you, sir. In the interest of time and respecting everyone's time, I really appreciate everyone putting forth their questions and everyone responding as quickly as possible. We really appreciate that. So thank you very much for your questions and thank you for your commitment to the community. And now I'm going to turn the floor over to Ms. Courtney Baker. She's going to close us out.
All right. Okay, great. So thank you, everyone, for participating. I just wanted to say thank you so much to all of our panelists for showing up, for telling us about all the things that are going on. I wanted to thank all of our presenters, guests, Chief Reinhardt, of course, the mayor. I wanted to just quickly talk about the things that are going on with BMPA and the ways that you can get involved. So on Monday, there will be a meeting on Zoom. There we go. It will be at 6:30 to 8. It's the monthly Zoom meeting. You can find more information about the BMPA meeting on BexleyMinorityParents.org. And then some more exciting things. Next Thursday evening, there will be a Zoom discussion about racism and criminal justice system moderated by both Monica and Becky, who were on this call. And you can find more information on the City of Bexley Facebook page or the City of Bexley or Bexley.org. And then next Friday, and I'm really excited about this one, since it is now Hispanic Heritage Month, there will be a food truck celebration on Main Street. And there will be a live 5-piece mariachi band starting at 5. You can order from a number of different restaurants and get well fed. I think, are we allowing everybody to give like one last closing call, or are we not?
No, I think we have time for that if we have panelists that want to have some closing thoughts. Panelists with closing
If
thoughts.
we don't, that's okay. So I just, Mayor, do you want me to wrap up a little bit and I'll throw it back to you?
One quick thing, if you don't mind if I jump in, just off script here. I just did see a question from Ms. Levine in regards to the assurances and protections that the mayor and the chief of police can provide that a person of color who submits a formal complaint to the BPD will not be a victim of retaliation. And Mayor, please jump in. But Mary and I can work in our capacity in pursuing your interests on an anonymous basis, and a bit more in terms of Mayor Kessler, if you want to touch on that. I just wanted to point it out because I think it is important towards our discussion tonight.
Yeah, Sam, that's exactly right. I mean, I think that's exactly why we created that program. We've heard that concern before. I can tell you from having been in the room whenever any sort of complaint has been investigated, whether formal or informal, that there's never any talk of retaliation. There's never, you know, the earnest position of different departments. And you understand, police department's not the only department that has received complaints, but the earnest desire of every department is to be responsive and to try to get back to anybody who feels that they have been wrongfully treated. And so I have never heard any sentiment, and in the I guess now 13 years that I have served as an elected official of the city of Bexley, that tracks with retaliation. But nonetheless, I understand why there's a trust gap, and that's why we created the Complaint Liaison Program and the Citizen Review Advisory Board in order to help alleviate those concerns. And those liaisons are there expressly for the purpose of people who feel intimidated by that system. Thank you, Sam.
So if there are no other comments, I just want to thank everybody again for being a part of this quarterly town hall. The next quarterly town hall will be December 3rd. So details are still coming forth with that. Be sure to look, keep looking on Bexley.org and the City of Bexley Facebook page. Again, 2020 has proved that we have a desperate need for change, and we have done so much, but we have so much further to go. Sometimes doing the work can be encouraging, sometimes it can be exhilarating, sometimes it can be downright frustrating. It takes a lot, and it really does take the community. And I'm so grateful that everybody has been looking for ways to how to make this community that we love so much better. So with that, I'm just going to leave you with one quote from Teddy Roosevelt. He says, "Do what you can with what you have, with where you are." On that, I'll throw it back to the mayor.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Tonight's meeting reminds me, and anytime we talk about these issues that are burning issues, that are urgent issues, that are issues that demand attention and response, that while we continue to earnestly work on what we've worked on, there is much more work to do. And we're not always going to agree on how to do that work. We're not always going to believe that that the same path is the right path. But you are, in Bexley, I can assure you that you are surrounded by elected officials that earnestly and authentically care in this space and will continue to work in this space as long as we're in these positions. And I urge you to, if you feel passionate about this, bring up issues to City Council, bring up issues to me. Consider joining a board or commission. Consider running for City Council or for mayor or for any public office. Our community benefits from a diversity of voices, and this is something that none of us can do alone. No single person can shoulder or effectuate change in a silo. So while we talked about specific initiatives tonight, I guarantee you there are other specific initiatives to come, things we're working on, things we don't even know yet that we will be pursuing. And we'll be pursuing them because of the common voice and the collective wisdom of our community. So thank you for participating tonight. Please continue to participate. And these public forums, the public forum of City Council, the different ones that Courtney just talked about coming up this week and weeks to follow are all invaluable ways to contribute and to add your voice to the dialogue. So thank you so much. I want to thank you, the Bexley Minority Parents Alliance, for all of your support in putting this together. The BMPA and all the groups that we heard from tonight have consistently advocated for keeping these conversations going, moving that ball forward, not just resting on sound bites and on aspirations, but rather pointing to very specific actions and metrics. So thank you so much. I don't want to end a webinar on saying metrics. Courtney, I am actually going to pass it right back to you for the actual end close, and then we will see you guys at the our next event.
Well, the only thing, Mr. Mayor, that I can add is if you have not filled out your census, be sure to do that, and don't forget to vote. Everyone, please stay well, stay healthy, take care, have a great evening. Bye-bye.